Hey everybody, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini, and welcome to episode number 14 of Fiber Fridays with Crafty Gemini. Welcome back everybody. This week I wanted to, or this month I should say, since we do these on the first Friday of every month. If you're new here, welcome, and if you've been missing me since October, welcome back. As the holidays approach, I wanted to kind of pull out a few of the different things that I like to use to make quick gifts and items like that for the holidays. So in a second, we'll show you what I have here on my table, but I wanted to just take a quick second to say hello to some friends and make sure that all the technology stuff is working. So if you can see me and hear me fine, go ahead and let me know in the chat box, whether you're watching on the Crafty Gemini Facebook page or on the Crafty Gemini YouTube channel. All right, and it looks like y'all can hear me. Hi, Tracy from Australia is tuning in. Mary Grace from Colorado is in the house. Let me give it a second just to make sure everyone else that is logging on can see me and hear me fine. And it looks like y'all can. Great. Hey, Julie. Hey, Teresa. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's swap them over to my over-the-shoulder camera so I can show them the knitting machines that I have here. Now, oftentimes on Fiber Friday, you'll either see socks that I've made on my circular sock knitting machine, and that machine is an Erlbacher Gearhart Speedster. We've done a few episodes. If you want to catch up on the archives of Fiber Friday episodes, we've done where we insert little videos and kind of show you how those machines work. But oftentimes people think that all metal machine is the same as these plastic knitting machines, and they're not. Technically, they're the same in the way that they work, but obviously one costs several $1,000s, and these you can get for under $100. So I wanted to bring these up because oftentimes people are looking for quick projects. Maybe your arthritis doesn't let you knit or crochet anymore. These are some cool options just to crank out a couple of gifts here and there. So this one is a 48 needle machine, and the links to these machines are in the video description box if you're watching us here on YouTube, as well as in the Facebook chat, okay, in the caption and all that. So this one, you can see that they have the same color, and I talk about this in a video tutorial that I have, so I'm not going to do a full demo, but I did want to show you that I did a couple of years ago when we first got these machines, the kids and I made several of these 2-layered hats, okay? We just used some inexpensive acrylic yarn. We made these Santa hats. One year we took our family picture for the holidays, all of us wearing these. We made the pom-poms to add on top out of yarn. You can also get the different pom-poms that are made from like synthetic fibers that have a fuzzier feel to them. But I have a free step-by-step tutorial on my YouTube channel for this. To find it, just do a quick search for Santa Hat Crafty Gemini. Those are the keywords. Just type in Santa Hat Crafty Gemini and you'll see it pop up. And if you type in Santa Hat knitting machine, my video is usually one of the first 2 or 3 that pop up. So super cute. They're thick because it's doubled up since I made, and I go over in the tutorial like how many rows to do of the white and how many of the red so that it turns out like this, but when you fold up the brim, you get that puffy and seamless white brim here. And you can see another one that we made. Now, I did want to give kind of like a little review and give you some tips if you are going to seek out one of these machines. They pretty much are all going to be made in China. Okay, and there'll be different manufacturers' names printed on them. So if you don't find the one that I have that says Jam it might say Centro. So this little guy here only has 22 needles. And of course, the needles are plastic. Everything on here mostly is plastic, okay? So this is for smaller items. I've used this one maybe 3 times. I made just some simple little baby beanies and baby hats because they have a smaller circumference since there's less needles, okay? And I've seen people make like, what are those things called? Like leg warmers, because it's a narrow circumference, right? So you can crank out a really long tube in some funky colors, maybe use some striped yarn and stuff, and they make all kinds of amazing little projects. The things that people figure out how to do with these, it just blows my mind every time I see it, okay? So this little guy has 22 needles. And then this is the one that I use when I make hats and beanies to gift to grown-ups or teenagers, you know, older kids. This has 48 needles, and it might seem really, really big, but believe it or not, these hats were made in here. So it looks like if it would be super stretched, but as you start to work the stitches and they start to fall in, they kind of go back in, and just like the bounciness, you know, and the stretchiness of the yarn kind of goes back to its original state and it stays down versus being spread out all in here. Now Jackie's saying, I got the Jam It 48 pin, which is this guy, and she says, I've made close to 100 hats to donate. That is amazing. So again, they're inexpensive, and as long as you're using the right yarn, that does, at least for me, I found that it took a little bit of trial and error, trying out either some DK weight yarns and some worsted weight yarns, and you can adjust the tension based on which one of the 3 little tension holes here you run the yarn through. So I'll just briefly run you through how this works. It also has a little counter on here, and I think when I checked today for, look at me putting this in here, wrong end, this goes in here. I put a long tail in, maybe 14 to 18 inches or so in the middle. I'm going to crank till I find a white needle that pops up. They're also numbered right along the inside rim here. So needle number 48, you see how this is a white one? That's the last needle. So I start going in front of the first needle, and with the yarn I go behind the next one, in front of the next one, behind that one, in front of the next one. So you alternate, and in order to get the needle to come up, you obviously have to crank a little bit. So it takes a little bit of practice just to like not go too far, but once you get the handle on it, you can go a little bit quicker. And sometimes I get confused and go like 2 in front and 2 in back, and you can just reverse it and do it again. Now, I usually like to put the ball of yarn in a basket or a bin on the floor just to release some of that tension from it being wound up into a skein or a ball, so that it's not tugging on it as you're cranking it, because that is something you definitely don't want to do. So let me see. I was in front of that one, behind that one, in front of that one, now behind. And I just work my way until we have, this is basically your cast on edge, and I get all of them, or I get the yarn all the way around one full round of this. So when I get to needle 48, I end up being behind it. So I crank a little past, and then there's a slit right in here where I just push that yarn down in there. Okay, and then you go down into the tension dial here. So this yarn actually, and I have the tag for it here, is a Big Twist Soft. It's just 100% acrylic. I got this from Joann's, and I haven't made any hats yet with this yarn. I had actually pulled it out to test it and see, is it too thick? Is it too thin? Can I make a black beanie out of this yarn without having to troubleshoot it too much? Okay, so I'm not exactly sure how this is going to react. If you're familiar with yarns, you know, like the a CYC category 3 or 4 yarn, you know that one manufacturer might call something worsted weight, which would have a number 4 on the tag, and it might be thinner than another worsted weight yarn that you use. And so that's what I mean by a little bit of troubleshooting here and there. So you have to like familiarize yourself with which yarn you're like, okay, my machine loves this yarn. I always have trouble with this yarn. And so that's what I find, that crafters that do a lot of stuff, they'll like find one yarn that works, and then they just get in a ton of colors, and they'll sit there and crank it out. Now, of course, this has a hand crank, and I don't have this secured to my table, but it does come with little suction cups underneath. So if you had a slick surface that you wanted to kind of dampen these a little bit and squish them down, even on here, I can squish it a little and it holds some. But you can, you know, suction that to a countertop even. That would work really well, so that it doesn't move on you while you're cranking. And then I'm going to go super duper slow. I don't know if you noticed earlier, I pressed the counter to reset it to 0 after that cast on edge before I start cranking past, okay? So now I'm just going to crank super duper slow, and I'm making sure that the yarn is grabbing. And I'm not going to sit here, obviously, and crank this whole thing out, but I just wanted you to see how quick it would be to just kind of get it cast on and start cranking the first couple of rows. This is something I always do when I'm testing out a new yarn, just to see, because if I run into issues right here on the first round, you better believe I ain't sticking with it. I will just take the yarn out of the little carrier or the slit here that's guiding it into the knitting machine, and I would just crank off all the way until all of it came off and rewind it. So you don't even have to cut your yarn if you want to basically frog a project. If you don't like the way it's turning out, or you have issues with drop stitches, or it's getting hung up, the tension may not be right, then you can just pull it back out and be like, oh, I'm saving that yarn for another project. Now, I can't even remember. Did I have this in the tension thing already? Depending on the yarn thickness, you can adjust the tension. So it basically has 3 little cuts into this little thing of plastic here. Yeah, you can see that. The one closest to the machine is the smallest hole, so that's going to put the most amount of tension on the yarn. I've done a hat before where I used a DK weight yarn, which is categorized as a number 3, and it's thinner than a worsted weight. So I did want the fabric to not be that open, and because I wanted it to be a little bit denser of a fabric with a thinner yarn, I made sure to put it in the first one so that it could apply a little bit more tension for the fabric that I wanted to make. But then you would just sit here and crank, crank, crankety, crank, crank, crank until you have however many rows, whether you're creating it yourself, the pattern, or you're following a tutorial. Like on the Santa hat one, I tell you, I can't even remember, but like 65, 70 rows of one color. Then I show you how to change color and do the other one. You keep going, and that way you can keep an eye on your counter. And then I show you obviously how to finish it off and finish off your hat. Okay, so pretty simple, but they're fun to do. So whether it's for you to give as a gift or you want to have something to do to make, again, for charity, if you sell at craft fairs, this is something that I think it's kind of fun to have in either one of the sizes, right? If you're making smaller baby hats and stuff, the little 22 pin or needle one is a good one for that, okay? Oh, C says, I've always wanted to use one of these. Thanks. You're welcome. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. The kids like them. My son knits hats, and once we started, we got some yarn and we put it on here. He's like, whoa, that's a lot faster than the 4 days it takes me to hand knit a hat. I'm like, yeah, but it's not the same. You know, it's not the same. So I like to dabble in a lot of things, and that's why I wanted to share this information with y'all, because I will hand knit a hat. I will crank out a hat on this machine. I will crochet a hat. I'll do whatever. I just like the different crafts, and there's so many ways to achieve the same project, right? The same similar end result. Okay, Nancy's asking, do you have a tutorial on this? I do. I have a tutorial on how to make this Santa hat on my YouTube channel. You can just do a quick search on youtube.com for Santa hat knitting tutorial, knitting machine tutorial. Okay, we put it in the chat as well, the link directly to the tutorial, so y'all can check it out, and that's going to be a great place for you to start, because I tell you exactly how to do it, how to cast it on, how many rows to do, and how to go from beginning to end to finish your hat. And of course, it's a Santa hat because I'm using the red and white, but you can choose 2 colors like this one and adjust the length of the hat depending on how slouchy you want it to be, how much hair the person you're making has. Y'all know everybody in my house has a ton of hair, so I tend to make these a little bit longer so they can accommodate, you know, the curls, the locks, and all that. If you're wanting a snugger hat that's closer to your actual skull, then you can make it smaller like this. But the cool thing too about making it doubled up, like I show you in that tutorial, is that you can adjust it. So if you want to take advantage of the full length of this hat, wear it like this, right? And you could have just done it with one color. You can roll up the brim super high up so it fits snugger, right? Higher up on the head. You can roll that brim up halfway, a little bit less, so you can change it up however you want. And so I found that using the acrylic yarn, it's cool because if you're going to give it as a gift, people can just pop it in the washing machine and it's still going to hold up. You don't have to worry about them shrinking it or felting it or something like that with real wool. Even a wool and acrylic blend would be really cool. If you live in a super cold climate, that would be great to use a wool and acrylic blend, because again, this is like it's 2 layers. It's one big tube, and I can't separate it because the other end of it is already tied up here with the pom-pom. This one too. But you may not know, we actually crank up. This is in red, and the whole tube in white is a whole nother length of this. So it's really, you are knitting a super duper long tube, and then you feed one end inside the other. So that's what gives you the lining and the exterior. It's kind of cool. You guys should check out that video tutorial for sure. And just change up the colors, obviously, if you don't want to make a Santa hat. But yeah, it's a step-by-step tutorial. And it's a good one if you have one of these little machines, okay? I'm just going to set this aside. I was going to cut the yarn, but you know me. I still need to go in and test that one out. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with y'all. If you're in the market, the affiliate links where I got them off of Amazon are in the chat box below. Let me pop into our chat for a second and see. Lenore says, I've just tuned in from Australia. I have one of these and have not used it yet. I need to follow your tutorial. You totally should. Take it out of the box, Lenore. I think you're really going to have a good time with it. Okay. Marge is asking, can you make a scarf with this? Absolutely. Same idea. Crank out a long, long tube. You can fringe off the ends. You can put it inside. You can loop it around and seam it together on one end. You can twist it and seam it up at the end and make yourself like an infinity scarf, right? There's so many things to do. Super, super fun. And then Edda's asking about how do you make the pom-pom. I don't think I have a tutorial on how to make the pom-pom, but we do have pom-pom makers. I want to say I use my little llama pom-pom maker that we have in the online shop. It's a tool that helps you get the same length for the wraparounds that you do, and then you cut it with scissors, and then you just kind of trim it up and give it a little bit of a haircut. But it's a lot of fun, especially if you want the pom-pom to match, right, and coordinate with the yarns that you're using. This is the same as this, although this looks brighter white than this does, and that is because you have red peeking through, so it gives it kind of a more yellowish tinge to the white down here. So, you know, things to keep in mind if you don't want a darker color that's behind, if you're using a solid white, to affect it, but I think it looks fine. Super cute little pom-pom. Okay. Oh, and Patty's asking, can you do a flat piece instead of a tube? I will, and I talk a little bit about this in the tutorial for the Santa hat, but I haven't used it yet. But you do have a setting on here that says T and P. So you can see that mine is set down to the bottom to the letter T, which means tubular. So if we're knitting in a tube in the round like this, that's what you want to have it set to. If the P is for a panel. So if you're doing a flat panel that then you're going to use to add it to something else, say you were making a little funky sweater or something, you wanted to make a little front panel for a kid, just flat, and then you would seam it to the back and things like that, you could set it to panel and do that as well. I think people do like halfway this way and they just knit back and forth, back and forth. So instead of going on a full round, it just creates a panel using however many stitches you have across of that flat panel. So I haven't used that yet, but yes, I know people that, you know, they use that. And some of the ladies that have the circular sock knitting machine, the metal one that I have, the heavy duty one, they do all kinds of great crafts and little toys and knick-knacky things with their machine, and I'm just blown away by what they're able to do with the same, you know, round cylinder and needles. Okay, so hopefully that answers y'all's questions. Next up, I have my blending board here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a demo because I know that we have been showing, what did we do last time? We were carding a Halloweeny bat that I made last time, and I was showing y'all my new drum card. Well, not new, but new to me of using it, okay? And I'm trying to peek and see, give me 1 second, see if I have the bobbin that I made, that I finished up from the Halloween bat that we made last week. Here it is. Let me grab it real quick in case some of you missed it. But I shared some of these pictures on Facebook, I think, and on Instagram. And y'all helped me make that bat last time on the last Fiber Friday. And here are, you know, I had shown y'all one little bat that I had made to show you what it looked like. And then we made one on the drum carder during the Fiber Friday episode. And I spun both of the little bats up, and I ended up with this whole bobbin. Ooh. Isn't that fun? Orange, blacks, and whites. And remember, we added some of that black stellina in there for a little bit of bling. I'm super happy with it. I haven't really decided, if you got my email today about the Fiber Friday episode, I mentioned that I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. If I'm going to maybe make some more bats with the same fiber in the same color combination so that I can spin it up and have a larger amount of yarn once I ply it. But I don't know. I might mix it with something else. I might leave it like that, but I'm not exactly sure. So instead of using a big old drum carder, there are more affordable options. Obviously, I think the most affordable way would probably be hand cards, which, remember we talked about the fabric that I had on the drum carders. I think it was 72 TPI. So 72 of these little tines or whatever per inch. And you can have little brushes. This is the little brush I like to use on here, but this is really for the drum carder to help you get the fiber up when you're taking it off. But there are drum or hand cards that you can use to comb and process the fiber the same way and make your little stuff. Now, the first product, or the first tool that I started off with was this blending board, because I thought, before I really figure out if I want to get into this, let me start off with a more affordable option. And so we got a blending board, and then my kids ended up taking it from me because they liked making little rolags on the blending board. And a rolag is this little roly-poly thing of fun fiber and colors. Isn't that super cute? So here are the colors. This is Corriedale, and these two are a merino wool blend. Not a blend, but merino each, and they're dyed separately. So I pulled some of this out, and then we're going to put it on here, and I'm going to show you how I make a little rolag. Now, I will say, disclaimer, my daughter has a better technique of pulling the fiber off of the blending board than I do, but she ain't here to help me. So we're going to do what we can do on the table, okay? But look how cute that is. Now, I'm not a professional. I don't sell these. There's people that make them super puffy and light and airy, and you can go on Etsy and buy them like this. And then the idea is once you blend the fibers and the colors and whatever little stellina, we can add the same stuff that we did when we made that drum carded bat. You add it right here. It's just on a flat chunk. And you don't have to make a rolag. You can pull the whole thing off lightly and just roll it up like we did that bat and make like a little bat also. But then you would take it from here and spin it. You can rip this in half like this and spin from one end, spin from the other. You can spin from the whole chunk. You can do whatever you want. It's just another way to put up the fiber for you to then spin from it, okay? And so before I start on here, I'll just show you what that looks like. Because of course, once I made that rolag, I was like, well, I want to leave that one intact for the for Fiber Friday, but I also want to show them what it looks like before I jump into the demo of spinning it up. So you can see, here's a rolag that I made earlier today. Okay, and I started spinning it already on my EEW 6.0 e-spinner here. Y'all know I love this thing because I can put it just like this on a countertop. And that's the little bit of yarn so far that I have spun. I think it looks super cute. You can see the pinks, the blues, the whites. And because I incorporated pink and this turquoisey tealy blue, where they mix and they were kind of combed together on here, they give you that little pop of like lavendery purple, which I love. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's set this aside and let's start putting this fiber on the blending board to show y'all how this goes. And I have a link to where I got this to. I got it on Etsy. They're not super cheap, but I think you can get one for like $100 or $150. Some companies have fancier wood. You know, it's like all these different elements. If it's embossed or engraved with your name, obviously you're going to be up there in the $200 to $300 range. But obviously still a lot more affordable than a drum carder, which can cost, you know, $800 plus. Okay. So, oh yeah, Patty says great colors for socks, right? Too bad I don't have some nylon in here. And I'm not that consistent with my yarn yet to make that thin of applied yarn for socks, Patty. I have not ventured down that way yet. When I make my socks, I still need to use, you know, store-bought, okay, purchased sock yarn. All right, so I just ripped off a chunk. This is one thing about working with fiber like this. You never want to like, oh, I don't need all this, and take a pair of scissors and cut it. That is a big no-no, okay? Because you're going to be cutting the actual fiber itself, and instead what you want to do is just pull it. Wherever the length of that fiber ends, you'll see that it'll separate, and it stays beautifully like this. Okay, so now I'm just going to place it on here. So this you got to be careful with because these are kind of sharp, and I don't know if you can see, but they're kind of slanted this way a little bit. So if you run your hands opposite of the way that they're slanted, you can really scratch yourself up. So it takes a little bit of handling, but I just place it here and then with my palm hold it, and then I pull, hold, pull, hold, pull, hold. And what I'm doing is basically allowing it to be like a little brush and the fibers are getting caught on it. So you can decide how much or how little. So that was kind of a little teensy bit, right? Say I want more white here. I'm going to hold it down more and pull and kind of press into the carding cloth. Now I should mention, because this is wood and they're kind of pricey if you get them already done up like this, there's DIY versions that you can make yourself because they sell this cloth and you can see that it's just stapled in here. So if you're handy or you live with someone who's handy, you could easily make one of these yourself, you know, to give it a try. So again, I'm just starting at the top and it's like a swipe. I'm just swiping it onto here. And ideally, I would be off the table. I kind of propped it up a little bit at an angle. I have two settings with this little step that's on the back of this. And I put it a little bit higher for the camera today. But normally, I'd have it a little bit flatter so that when I get to the end here, my hand is not, you know, hitting the table here. And I have a little bit more room to kind of pull this way at the bottom. But okay. I'm going to keep doing this across. We'll add some pink and we'll add some blue. I'm not going to keep going and doing like a super thick layer. I just kind of want y'all to see the technique, to see that you still end up with fun, blended colors that you can spin your yarn from. And so many ways to do it. So see here, I have like this big chunk that's sticking up at the top. Usually I'll go through and do one layer, and then I'll take this brush and I'll turn it upside down so that the tines on this thing are going opposite these guys. And so what that does is it allows me to brush it in there without lifting up the fiber. So I'll show you the opposite. If I go like this and I go like that, I actually pull it off, right? And that's not really what I want. I wanted them to go further in so that I can layer up my fibers on that carding cloth. So see how I'm not pulling it up? Instead, they just get squished in there. So the first time you do that, you're like, no, I ruined my work. Why are the fibers coming up? That's not what I meant to do. And then you quickly figure out, hey, change the position of the brush so that you can push them down in there, because you can't really push them in there with your fingers, right? We need the brush to do it for us. Oh, but it's so satisfying. Even if you don't ever spin the yarn, making it and blending these colors is super duper fun. All right, so say we have a little bit of white on there. Let's get some pink on here. And you don't have to do like full layers. There's a lot of different fun techniques of like doing a stripe here, doing a gradient from like purples and reds and pinks. And there's all kinds of fun stuff that you can find online. Different tutorials that I've seen that people are teaching different methods, especially if you want to get a specific color blend in the yarn that you're spinning. You can set it up here because you're making the blend that you're going to spin into yarn. You set it up in a certain way so that then you spin a certain way and you get exactly the yarn that you want. I'm not that intentional with my yarn. I just like to play with fiber and color, so I don't really care where the stuff goes. So again, you see how it's kind of sitting on top. I'll come in here and just swipe it down so that it falls further in and brush them all evenly. Let's go in and add some blue. Isn't this fun? I love it. So same thing. And you would just keep layering. You can do whatever you want. You can throw some black in here, some gold, anything. And if it's like a teensy little bit, it's just going to be like that little bit of sparkle when you go in and spin your yarn. And I always try to remind myself to go to the outer edges too, so that they're not, you know, your layers are still the same thickness the whole width of the blending board and not just at in the center area. But be careful, because this stuff will scratch you up if if you scrape yourself by mistake. Not good. All right, let's do some more white. And I think I'll add some more blue on this one because I think my other ones have a lot of pinks. So I want to balance that a little bit more out. And this is one little craft where I'm always like, oh, I'm just going to play around with this for 5 minutes. And the time just gets away from you. You start here and you're just like, la da da, painting and painting with fiber. And then you're like, whoa, an hour passed. What's going on? Okay, I think that's enough. So now, to get this off of here, you're going to lift up at the bottom. You see how easily and quickly that puffs up and comes up? Then they usually will come with two dowels like this for you to pull and sandwich it. So remember I said that we could also make little bats like we did on the last episode on the drum carder. You could just carefully peel this whole thing off. Look how it's coming up. You could just peel the whole thing off and it would just be one big fluff of fiber, which would be amazing. I mean, just feeling it, it just is so light and airy. But if you wanted to make the roll lag that I showed earlier, which of course I already ripped it apart. I split it in two. But that little guy that I showed you like that before I split it in half, you would take one dowel underneath, another one on top. Now the trickiest part with this, I would say, is two different things. One, Not rolling these suckers so tight that you won't be able to pull out a dowel once you get all the fiber off of the blending board. And if you've tried this before, you know what I'm talking about. That is why I say my daughter is better at this than I am. I tend to like really grip on tight to everything, and she has it down to a science where she doesn't. So when I have it like this, I have her get it off for me, okay? So anyways, you're going to sandwich the end of the fiber between these two dowels. And these little scraggly ends, I'm just going to roll them like that. Look how pretty. Ooh, it's like cotton candy, y'all. So you can just roll them in, sandwich between the end, and then here's what it is. We're not just going to roll up. And I don't have this secured to my table, so bear with me. I'm going to hold on to these two, and my thumbs are on the board itself so that I can push the board away from me as I pull. Look at that. And you kind of like comb out a little bit to make it fluffier. So let me stop messing with this and try it again. You wouldn't do this. You would do it in one fell swoop. So just tug a little bit, then roll. And you see, I have to always remind myself to loosen these guys up, because whenever I tug, I pull tight. And then I can't get the dowels out at the end. But I just tug a little bit. Again, my thumbs are on here. I'm going to pull. And so you're kind of like lifting up, tugging. Look at those colors. That just helps like comb them through and blend them, blend the colors. You can see the little spots of purple popping up where that pink is meeting the blue. I love it. So I just lift up a little bit and I can see my dowels are tight. I will figure it out at the end. I'm telling you, my kid is better at this than me. So I will roll, and you just keep going till you work your way to the top. Pull a little bit, tug. Oh, and it feels so good. Like you can feel it combing through. It's amazing. It's such a tactile craft. Like that's why I said earlier, even if you don't ever spin the yarn, just making the bat or the Rolex is amazing. And this is going to be a beast to take out a dowel. I can tell because I cinched them up super tight. Anyway, you have this here. The idea is that you didn't do it super duper tight, and you can easily pull a dowel out. And you can see that, okay, that wasn't too bad. Usually I'm like, help, pull, push, trying to get them out. But once you pull out one dowel, then the other one, you can just slide it right off. And you have a fun little Rolag that you can spin from. Isn't that cool? I love this so much. Like that. Mine are kind of dense because I'm not that fluffy and light on my hands, but it's no big deal. As long as I get those fun colors in there, I'm happy to take it from here to go spin. So then on the end, you would just pluck out a little bit and see, this is what happens. Like you start pulling kind of from the center and you can see that it starts to undo like this. And I love the way that the colors then start coming out as we're running it through whatever spinning wheel or e-spinner you're using to make your yarn. That's why I like to just kind of throw all the colors in there, blend them up. And then I am surprised as I spin how the colors are coming out as I'm feeding it into the machine. Okay. So then you get your little spinning wheel. This is my little e-spinner. Now the manufacturer for this is Dreaming Robots. This is an EEW 6.0. There's a lot of versions of it. The designer, you know, he designs different things, makes changes to them. He usually will use Kickstarter and put together a campaign when he engineers new items. And so I'm on the Kickstarter for like 2 of his things that are coming out. I think the Nano 2 that's going to ship sometime later this year is like a teensy e-spinner like this, a Nano. It's really, really small, but it's like pocket size. I mean, you can hold it in your hand. And so this is, I think, the second version of it. So I went ahead and ordered that one, you know, supporting through the Kickstarter campaign. And I just want to make sure that this is on. Great. My battery, because I have it on a battery, so it comes with a cord that you can plug in, but I got a battery pack that then I plug it up to that, and when I tell you I have not charged that battery in literal months, it's still running. So let me put this here because I'm right-handed. It's like a foot pedal, but I'm not going to put it on the floor because for my e-spinner I just use it here. Okay, adjust my speed, and then let's start spinning from our little Rolag. Oh my God, I could be here all day. All the little colors that I'm pulling out of here, the blending of the blues, the pinks, the whites. I just let it spin up and I load it up on here. And then you just kind of move these little guides back and forth so that you can more evenly fill your bobbin, right? If I stay in the same spot and I spin this entire row lag, it's going to be a huge mound right here, and you don't want that. You want to be stopping every little bit and scooting these guides up so that you can fill your bobbin as evenly as possible. When I first started, they were a mess. It would be like a big hump, then a low area, then a big hump, a low area like that all throughout the whole thing. And it's because I was still getting the hang of spinning, so I was so focused on the spinning that I would totally forget to like, hey, stop and fix your bobbin, you know, and adjust the way that it's feeding onto the bobbin. And if I need to move the guides, I kind of just reverse the wheel and turn it the bobbin, and I turn it back to give myself some more slack, and then I'll scoot this up, and that way I know this bit that was already in there, once I keep spinning, it's now going to fill in a different area to give me of a more even fill. And then you just sit there with your little row lag so you can see, although the blending board looks like it's just a little bit of fiber that you get on there, you might think one row lag like that, like that's not going to be enough yarn. I did three of the blending board, 3 row lags I made from the blending board. And mine are more dense because I did the entire blending board in 1 row lag. Some people just, you know how I was rolling up and pulling? They'll do that 2 times and then pull that off completely, and that's 1 row lag. Then they'll go in, grab another chunk, and so they'll end up with 4 to 6 row lags from the 1 blending board. Since it's just for me and I'm the one spinning it, I don't really care. I just do it all into one, then start again with the blending board, you know, and start spinning myself start blending a whole nother batch. Okay? So that is how I make row lags and spin on my EEW 6 e-spinner here. Let me scoot this back. I want y'all to see the color changes. And that little bubble of orange that you see there is my scrap yarn. You got to load on like your leader, a chunk of yarn to then start spinning into. So that's what you see there. That's not part of the yarn. It's just what's helping me get the yarn onto the bobbin. Okay? But look at that. So cute. Literal cotton candy. I love it. And it's cool because where the white hits the pink or the blue hits the white, you get that barber pulling when it blends in just like that. Super duper fun. Actually, let me show y'all a little bit more from here since this is a close-up shot so you can kind of see what the yarn is looking like, the singles of it as I'm getting it onto the bobbin. And I'll just do a little bit more, and I think that's going to be it for tonight. Oh, I'm all the way over by my head. Got it. Ta-da. I was trying to get it to be here so that I could show my hands a little bit more, but I think there is okay. So that they can see this part too. Now another thing I like about using the brush and kind of pulling on the fiber as I'm taking it off of that blending board is that any little matted up knots of the fiber, they kind of get combed out a little bit, and so it's less work that I have to do here as I'm feeding the fiber in of separating it. Because if I don't want it to be like neppy little bits and I want it to be more smooth, I don't really want to be sitting here fighting with little matted up bits of fiber as I'm, you know, trying to just enjoy the spin. Oh, love it. So yeah, so I'm glad that I did this little demo because now I have some fun fiber and row lags to spin up, and you can see that now I can just put this in a little basket, keep my e-spinner next to my bed on the nightstand, and every night before bed I can just spin a little bit more from these little bundles. Aren't they cute? I'm really happy with these colors. I should have added a little bit of bling to it, but that's okay. Next time. All right, so let me make sure I don't have any other questions. You can put my face back up there. Oh, Lenore says, what a fabulous little spinning wheel. Yes, my little e-spinner, I love it. It's super quiet too. And you can literally, I mean, if you like to stand up while you work and stand up while you do things instead of sitting down, it's great because you can put it on any countertop, on your standing desk and all that. Oh, Deborah says, very therapeutic. I have to agree, Deborah. It absolutely is therapeutic. All right. And C had asked a question earlier asking me, what have I made from my yarn? So I had made a hat, and I've shown it on a few episodes, where I spun up the yarn, I spun another bobbin, I plied them together, and then I knit a hat. So that was my first project that I did from beginning to end. Other than that, I haven't used it. I have finished some skeins, but I like to spin the singles like this, and I have to sit down because I think I'm out of bobbins for this e-spinner now. They all have yarn on them in the single ply, right? So I need to go in and kind of match up together, like this one with that one. Let's ply those two together. And that just means putting together the single strand of the yarn with another one together with that one. Here's another bobbin that I have, and I've showed this quite a few times. This one is one from our homegrown fiber. Some of y'all don't know, but we have Florida cracker sheep here, and we had them processed or sheared last year, and the wool processed. And so then I went in and blended it up with some merino that was dyed, that purplish fuchsia-ish color that you see there, with some black merino, and I have been spinning it up. And so those little, you see how there's like little bits of white? That's from our wool. So I think for me, at least, in spinning the fiber, it's a lot more enjoyable to mix it with other stuff because it's kind of a coarser wool. You can see all the little bits there. And that's what we would call neps. And so if you're going for an art yarn look, or you want something with those little tweedy bits or more texture, that's how this one is turning out, and I'm super happy with it. So I still have more. I mean, I have bags full from the processed wool from our sheep that I'm going to be blending. I had my friend Vicky from Vicky's Wool. She processed all our homegrown wool at her little mill that she has, and I had her dye some of it up into like blues and purples. So those I need to blend into with maybe some of the natural color of the sheep's wool. But all my bobbins have something on them, so I need to start plying more of them. And then I have some hanks of yarn that I've already plied. I've already finished them off, you know, like wet them up, dry them and all that, and I just haven't chosen a project yet to make with it, but I do have that too. But again, I think I've mentioned this before on several episodes of Fiber Friday. Each one of the steps of going from wool to an actual knitted or crocheted project, each one is a different craft for me. So I like making the yarn, even if I never use it in an actual project, which is kind of weird because when I used to think about spinning, I'm like, why would people want to start from scratch? That takes forever. I'd rather just get the yarn and start making, but it's a totally different level of satisfaction. It's a totally different thing. Okay. All right, so Patty, we're working. She says, when can we expect a new project? And by new project, she means one of my knit-alongs or crochet-alongs. So we're working on the next ones. Things are getting a little bit tight coming up on the holidays, but we'll have something else coming up here soon for y'all, okay? So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm glad that y'all came to spend some little fun fiber time with me on this episode of Fiber Friday. If you're new here, again, make sure that you check out the archives because we have 13 other episodes. And if you're catching one of us one of these episodes finally live, make sure that you check back because we are here the first Friday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. I hope you make some time to work on some crafts that you love. And I will see y'all in the next video.